Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we're going to be talking about abortion as it existed in antiquity and the biblical view upon that. A papyri found in the 1st century before Christ sends a letter from a husband to his wife. I urge you, he says, take care of the little one, and as soon as we receive our pay, I will send it to you. If by chance you bear a child, in other words, could be you're pregnant, maybe not, but if by chance you bear a child, if it is a boy, let it be. If it is a girl, expose it. And that pictures the legal system in the 1st century, that the child, once it was born, it still had no rights. A child could be left and abandoned and just be exposed to the elements, or it could be taken and loved and cared for. But a child as such, even one once it had been born, had absolutely no rights. Aristotle, speaking a couple hundred years before Christ, he says, as to exposing or rearing the children born, let there be a law that no deformed child shall be reared. And again, in other words, he wanted to make it against the law to bear a deformed child. If a child was born and it was deformed, it was to be put to death. It was to be exposed to the elements. He goes on to say, but on the ground of number of children, if the regular customs hinder any of those born being exposed, there must be a limit fixed to the procreation of offspring. That is, just in his day, they had this view of population control, and he said, if there's just too many people, let the young ones die. That's okay, so that we can have more to eat and so on. He goes on to say, and if any people have a child as a result of intercourse in contravention of these regulations, abortion must be practiced on it before it has developed sensation and life. Of course, we know that that's a lot earlier than he might have realized. He goes on to say, for the line between lawful and unlawful abortion will be marked by the fact of having sensation and being alive. And so notice, he actually talks about the idea of having a lawful versus an unlawful abortion. The Hippocratic Oath, Hippocrates, this was part of the oath. He said, I will not give to a woman a pessary to cause abortion. That was one of the methods that they used. You gave them something that they would take, and it would cause the body to contract. He says, but I will keep pure and holy both my life and my art. Remember, the sort of the hallmark of the Hippocratic Oath was, I will do no harm, and that included, at least in his view, the taking of an infant life still in the womb. We read that Romulus sufficiently regulated and suitably disposed the city, that is the city of Rome, both for peace and for war, and he made it large and prosperous, or populous, I should say, by the following means. In the first place, he obliged the inhabitants to bring up all their male children, and the firstborn of the females, and forbade them to destroy any children under 3 years of age, unless they were maimed or monstrous from their very birth. That is, he made it illegal to have an abortion. Now, it wasn't necessarily for humane reasons. It's because he wanted to see the population grow, and they needed more people. We go on to, and this is from Dionysius of Halicarnassus, he goes on to say, these he did not forbid their parents to expose, provided they first showed them to their 5 nearest neighbors, and these also approved. Against those who disobeyed this law, he fixed various penalties, including the confiscation of half their property. And so it was sort of heavy-handed, but maimed and disabled children were to be exposed. They were seen as a blight and a hindrance and a burden on society, but other children were to be left alive. Diochrysostom, we're getting now to the 1st and early 2nd century. He says, but in the case of slave women, on the other hand, some destroy the child before birth, and others afterward, if they can do so without being caught, and yet sometimes even with the connivance of their husband, that they may not be involved in trouble by being compelled to raise children in addition to their enduring slavery. So this is speaking of slaves who found themselves pregnant, sometimes would abort, sometimes would abort the child, or maybe have the child and then kill the child afterwards. Now, the Jewish attitude, and so far we've just been talking about pagan Roman and Greek attitudes toward abortion. Tacitus, he's speaking about the Jews. He's not Jewish himself. He's not pro-Jewish in any way, shape, or form. But he says it is a crime among them to kill any newborn infant. That wasn't a crime for Romans. They thought that was okay. Maybe not the best of things to do, but it was allowed. But among the Jews, it was seen as a crime because the Jewish people, going all the way back to the book of Genesis, they revered the idea of being fruitful and multiplying and having children. So that was not something that had any kind of negative circumstance upon it. Josephus, in his book Against Appian, he is debating. Appian has written some things against the Jews, and Josephus is answering that. He says, the law, moreover, enjoins us to bring up all our offspring, and forbids women to cause abortion of what is begotten, or to destroy it afterward. Remember, in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, they did both of those. Josephus says the Jews don't do either of those, and we see that as part of our law. He goes on to say, and if any woman appears to have so done, she will be a murderer of her child by destroying a living creature and diminishing humankind. So the Jewish view was that any sort of, we could call post-birth abortion or pre-birth abortion, equally made someone a murderer. The Christians, the early Christians, took the same idea. This is seen in the Didache. That's a manual written in the early 2nd century, sort of describing just some basics of what Christians believe. And part of that said, you shall not murder a child by abortion, nor kill him when born, because remember, they did both in the ancient world. But the Christians did not take that kind of attitude. Tertullian, speaking in the around 200, he says, the embryo, therefore, becomes a human being in the womb from the moment that its form is completed, that is, from conception. The law of Moses indeed punishes with due penalties the man who shall cause abortion, inasmuch as there exists already the rudiment of a human being, which has been imputed to it, even now the condition of life and death. You see, a baby in the womb can either be alive or it can be dead, since it is already liable to the issues of both, although by living still in the mother, it for the most part shares its own state with the mother. He recognizes that, and yet he says it's understood not just among Jewish people, but among Christians as well, that abortion is wrong, it is murder. And so he does not allow Christians to partake in that.